We talked about good and evil. We talked about nakedness and cunning. We talked about day. These are Hebrew people, the Hebrew words that actually makes a very important makes an important difference to understand them. What does good mean in the Genesis account? The first part when it says, "And God saw that it was good." What does it mean? What does tov mean, or tov? Tov. You know when what is the greeting for good morning in the Hebrew language? Boker tov. What about this? Good night. Laila tov. Laila tov is good night. Boker tov is good morning. So tov means good. What does it mean? That word, what does it mean? What's the meaning of good? When God said, "And God saw the light, it was good," what does it mean? Just give me whatever you think. That doesn't have. We're gonna have to develop it somehow, because if you don't really give me what you think, it's gonna go over your head.
Pure.
Huh?
Pure.
Pure could be. Pure actually more is tahur. Closer to holiness. Remember Ratatouille? When he was doing the poison chick, and he kept saying, "Clean, clean, close to godliness." And the other mouse looked at him and said, "Because you're bringing their food. He has a sense of smell. So he can smell poison." They made him a poison chicken. So he sits on a big box, and they bring the food to him, and he smells it. And he says, "Clean." And they move, "Clean." And then one of them, he got tired of clean. He said, "Close to godliness." And the mouse looks at that. He said, "Clean, go." So tahur means pure, close to holiness. Holiness. Huh? But what is good? Actually, good, it's used here as a general sense of what's pleasant, agreeable, something pleasing to me. And this becomes relative, right? Because what might be pleasing to you might be actually offending to, like for example, I hate black. I told you this. Black, I hate it. It's just irony, right? God's irony with me. I think when my father died when I was 11 years old, and I saw my mother and my grandmother and all the aunts and I, Kolom started to wear black, it was devastating to me. And that's a color of sadness, color of devastation, of disasters. And I got to wear it. So I remember sitting there in the cafeteria in the vineyard in Boston, and I sat in that corner I will never forget. And I sobbed for an hour. I wanted to do grieving. I believe that would help me. And actually it helped. After an hour of sobbing on the black, I accepted it. And that's it. So this to me was actually raw. This is really a pure evil. But somebody else will look at that black and says, "That's elegant. It's good. It's tov," right? So it's at the end, what we mean by good and evil is not actually righteous, purity, holiness, and sin. No, it is actually what pleases a person. So good is a big word. So there's a difference now. Now you go and define good and evil morally by what pleases God would become righteousness. What displeases God becomes sin. When I am with God, whatever displeases God displeases me. Whatever pleases God pleases me. When I separate from God and take it on my own, well, maybe I would choose things that would actually be displeasing too. We get this idea? So the ability to make the differentiation between what's pleasant and what not pleasant. Babies. Let's think about babies. What do babies think about good and evil? I know a child when he was little, a year old, maybe less than a year, maybe just crawling, the mother told me. He took something and put it in his mouth. And he was like enjoying it, chewing on it. It was a lizard. And the mother tried to get, what is that my boy is doing? Open your mouth, Habibi, show me, give me something, give me a piece. No, I'm taking it for myself. I'm giving no one any pieces. It's so tov yummy. So tov, but to the mother it is Absolute Ra. So you understand, when we were babies, we don't have a differentiation between good and evil. We need to learn from our parents what's good and what's evil. So this is what Adam and Eve were. They were naive, unable to make sure that the differentiation between what's suitable, what's pleasant, what's not pleasant. And who was their coach? Who was the mother and father and told them about good and evil? It's God. And he's trying to teach them in a very, very... Once you understand this, the whole story changes. It makes a difference. It makes a big sense. Why would God say to Adam... the divine inspiration in Genesis 1, Genesis 2. It says this. And God said, just remember this verse, it is not good, it is not tov, it's actually ra, for man to be, for the first time, God says something is not good. He's been saying good, very good, and all of a sudden he's saying, this is no good for man to be alone. Let us make him, this is how it's said, let us make him a help comparable to him. God already diagnosed it as not good, and he's going to fix it. How he's going to fix it? By making him a helper comparable to him. Period. And listen to what the gospel says, or the book of Genesis says. This is what he said. It's not good for man to be alone. Let's make him helper comparable to him. And God made all the creation, or the animals and the birds of the sky from the dust. And then he brought them to Adam to see what Adam would call them. Very interesting. It seems like it's disconnected. God first, one thing, can we go get the Bible? I just want to read that first. For one aspect he says, it's not good for man to be alone. And the next minute he says, let's see what Adam would call the animals. It seems disconnected, right? What's that to do with this? What is this to do with the loneliness of Adam? Can we get chapter 2, Genesis. It's not connecting.
Oh, it's connected. It just...
Go right Genesis 2. Here we go. Just expand it. Here, go down. Let's read this piece because it's actually one of the things that worth looking at. Go down. Down. Here. And God and the Lord God said, it is not good, not tov. I'm talking about the good again, good and evil. It's not good that man should be alone. Something God is not pleasant for him. I will make him a helper comparable to him. The decision already been made. There is a decision for Adam to get married. There's nothing, and have a family, and have the whole human race. There is a decision God has taken already. But listen to what happens. After this period, it's describing to us what happened, not after, because this is the way some people make this as, okay, if it's in chronology, then if chronological order should do, then Adam was created first, then the animals, then Eve. But the chapter 1 says that God created animals before Adam. It is just a summary of what God... This is a theological point. He's not saying, okay, why is he saying out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field? Because when he's going to go there to make the companion, he's not going to be from the ground. He's reminding us this is going to be a different story. It is not that there is something happened and then next. There is no chronology here. It's a theological point. Out of the ground, he's saying something here, very, very deep and very, it's theological, real theology. And he said, he brought them, every bird, the beast of the field, the bird of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. All right, see, I always say this and make a joke with students in the seminary too. I say, okay, a father finds his only son, there's one son, and he is grown up, he's in his 20s, and the father says, my son is very lonely. We need to get him married. Son, yes, Dad, come, let's go to the pet store. Does that make sense to anybody? There's disconnect here, right? The idea that God is actually talking about is having Adam getting married, having a companion. But when follows, it talks about the animals. But he's giving you a hint. The animals are not, they're already from the ground. So he brings them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. Every detail here has a point. Like, for example, it is God who brings the animals to Adam. Adam doesn't go look for the animals. He brings them. He lines them up to Adam and say, okay, they're coming to you now. And they give them names. And Adam gave names to all the cattle, the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper comparable to him. Who made that realization? It's not God, because God already made that point early on. So who discovered that he has no helper comparable to him? How did he discover that? By looking at the animals. When he looked very carefully at the animals, I mean, you get a baby, a child, and your mother wants to feed them. Say, look at the cat. There might be a cat in the neighborhood. You don't know if it's a female cat or a male cat, and that child will be entertained by looking, not paying attention. The mother would keep stuffing stuff in his mouth, right? But then if you ask the child to look carefully at the cats, he will discover something. Oh, there is a he cat, and there is a she cat, and there are kittens. There is a he dog and she dog, and there are puppies, and so on. So when God brought to Adam the animals to name, he wanted many things. One of them is for Adam to take dominion, to exercise dominion over the animals. He is the king. God wanted him on top of everything. So that's number one. Number two, he wants him to learn something God already had made. But he wants Adam to make a free choice, because he's not like them. That's why this idea about they were from the ground. They might be like him in the source, but he's going to make something from him for him. So he made the realization. Adam made the realization in his heart. Okay, that seems like every time I'm looking at a family, there is a tug in my heart that's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Something growing on me. What's that? I don't have one. Every one of them have it. I don't have it. We have similar things, but I don't have that thing. Once that realization happened, there's not a prayer. And this is what actually, you can think of this as Jesus as being the second Adam. Sometimes in many places, Jesus doesn't need to pray. He just have a place in his heart where he feels, I need this. Someone is sick. Someone is dead. You know, when he talked about Lazarus, what did he say? When he prayed. No, when he prayed. He knelt down and said, Father, I thank you for you have heard me. Did he say anything about raising Lazarus? Did Jesus say, Father, please raise Lazarus? Or give this man life back? Where is he asking? I thank you for you have heard me. When did Jesus ask that Lazarus should be raised? When? When he? Huh? You could say that, but there's a second where it actually reaches that climax. When he cried. He went and his heart was broken because his beloved friend Lazarus, that brokenness of heart was immediately responded to by the Father, and he gave him life. Not that Jesus can raise him by himself, but in that case, Jesus is opening to us a whole communication world between him and the Father. He doesn't need to say words. Like us, we say words. But for Jesus and Adam, did Adam say anything about needing a wife? He just made a realization in his heart. Once that realization is made, God responds by giving him, yes, amen. Yeah. So you understand this point? So the good and evil here is perceived not as something wrong or something unrighteous. It's received as need that is unmet. Then God made a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. I get too many things out of this. One of them is the communication between God and Adam was not verbal. That is the perfect way of communicating in the spirit. When someone is close to God, they don't need to even pray. They only wish it from their heart, and they are real and true, and God listens. You don't have to even pray. Isaiah talked about this. If you read the prophets, you understand that Isaiah said, before they even speak, you respond. Before they cry to you, you attend to their needs. There is something much deeper than what we're doing. Just to go to weak words to communicate to God what we want, He knows. And then Jesus would repeat it also. He says, you don't need to pray for food and drink because all this, God knows that you need it. And He will give it to you. Then the other thing I want to talk about is that there is a pattern of so if God labeled this as, if God labeled the lack of a family as not good, He didn't force it on Adam. He coached Adam gently to realize it. You get that? This is the best parenting. When we see our kids are growing up, we don't give them rules. We coach them and patient enough to guide them in the way. That means I'm dedicated to them. I'm actually patient enough to dedicate myself to them. I have enough time and I know exactly what to do to get them into realizing this on their own, which is the perfect way of coaching. This is a perfect way of parenting. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of time, but it takes also someone who is aware. All right? So we talked about this as the good and evil. So why would the serpent come immediately after that? Why would the serpent, now you understand the story and the fundamentals of it, why would the serpent now intervene, have to come and do something? And has to do something with the judgment of good and evil. Because the tree is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And people might ask, why would God give them a tree that would get them lost? Because God is going to have to finish creating everything. Like for example, some people allude to this in their talk. I'm going to give an example of driving a car. You have a key, and you drive a car, and you have a car that you want to give to your child when they hit the driving age. And the keys are here, because you have a car. And the keys are here. But the kids, you tell them, be careful, don't take the keys and go to the car and drive. You're not ready yet. Your legs are not long enough. You don't know how to. You might actually crash, and you might die. And we have a car. I bought it. It's part of the family business. So if the child goes and takes the key and try it and defy your order before his time to have a license, what will happen? Guaranteed. They will crash and even die. So I'm thinking more that the tree, God doesn't create anything evil, nor was planted by anybody else. The devil cannot create things like this. I believe it is something that was good, but it was not the time for it to be used. And God was doing some schooling. Remember how when you drive, you have to go through driver's education to make sure that you know all the laws, you know all the problems, how you avoid things. So God is coaching. God started to do the coaching. And all of a sudden, the devil comes and say, I don't think this is going to be okay. He's going to make them like him. And he planned on that from the beginning. And I don't want many of him. I'll take them. Just let them come to me. How you do this? Said, I think I'm going to use their nakedness. Why? The devil knows how to differentiate good and evil. Actually, it's not good for us to be naked. Or is it? Nakedness actually, in the Hebrew, is arwum. Arwum is the word. Cunning is arum. So, the nakedness is vulnerability. And then notice, and I think Adam and Eve will notice this. As he looked at the animals and the birds to name them, he also looked at animals and birds and understood. Adam and Eve understood that all of them are covered. Tell me about an animal that's not covered.
The naked mole rat.
The naked, but that's the one without hair. That's like an odd thing, and that's something you have to really, yeah? Yeah, sure. But an animal like that is very vulnerable, right? In the cold times, they have to find somewhere to hide. So humans are actually, as a genus, as a species, are actually naked. They have no feathers, no scales, no leather, no fur, no hair, nothing. You see cats and dogs in the street and you say how they are surviving this winter. We need to go in their blankets, and if we get the degrees get there like two notches just down below the comfortable zone, we start shaking. Well, how about these deer and all the wild animals? I just think the devil knew that once they see that they are naked, they're going to distrust God. They're going to say, how did our Father create us this way, give us existence, and He didn't look after us enough to give us cover? How are we going to do this? Oh, I think they have to start taking knowledge to their hands. They have to take their discernment, their judging into their hands, and then they will see it. So what did He do? He said the only way to this is this tree, which He is preparing for them to take at certain point. Let's give it to them early. They are naive. They're going to think a bit. I know how they're going to think. We're gonna start breaking this relationship. So when He comes to the woman, He starts with this very interesting question. The serpent says, did really God say not to eat from all of the trees? He knows. But He's trying to get her to, you know that, to speak. Because He wants to get her to engage into conversation. In the conversation He says, God knows. This is the key. So listen to me. This is the beginning. And this is the beginning of relationship break with God in all the human beings. Not only Adam and Eve. It's typical. Did really God say not to eat of all the trees? She says, no, you can eat of all the trees except the tree for the good and evil. And listen, no, the woman said, the woman, she was not Eve yet, said, no, God did not say that. He said, you can eat of all the trees you can eat except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Listen, you shall not eat it, nor you should touch it. And I spoke about this a few times. Where did this come from? Because when God gave the commandments, He said, don't eat of it. That's it, point. He never said, don't touch it. So the rabbis, they have the slogan after that. The rabbi said, where does the do not touch it come from? Eve was not there when Adam was taking the commandment from God. God gave the commandment to Adam not to eat of it. He didn't say anything about touching. But who gave the commandment to Eve? Guess what? There's no other person. So definitely, or they think, the person that added don't touch it was Adam. And that's why they come with the slogan, whoever adds to the commandment of God takes from it. When you're trying to emphasize something so hard, you're actually weakening it. So Adam says, don't even touch it, right? So what happened? That's what the rabbis say. Most probably what happened is the serpent came to the tree, and it says, did really God say not to eat of the trees? And He's standing next to the tree, and then He has legs and arms. And Eve says, no, he said, just the trees of the, is this tree? He said, don't touch it. He said, oh, really? He said, start shaking it. Hanging from the rabbis say that. What is he trying to say? It's a lie. God is lying to you. I'm touching the tree, and I'm alive. Nothing happened to me. So who helped the serpent? No, Adam. So that's what they say. So they started doubting God, actually disbelieving what He said. This is the beginning. And guess what? If you want to think about it, theologically again, why would be the first thing that God asks of us is faith? Trust.
Trust, yeah.
Why? Because we lost the relationship through distrust. You want to go back into Him? That's the only way you can go back, because that's the barrier. That's what happened. We started distrusting God and thinking He's not. And then immediately when she took from the tree and started judging, looked at herself and found that she is actually, that's the first thing that happens. Why would God leave Adam and Eve? And I've thought about this why would He leave them naked? Why would He leave the human race without cover? We talked about this last time. We say in communication, in intimacy, you need to have vulnerability. They say the levels of communications, right, Mary? The levels of communication goes from cliches, casual talk, good morning, good night, whatever, and then you go slowly into your opinion about Biden, whatever the weather like, whatever, and then you go up to politics, and then you go into more sensitive issues, until you do what? You open up your weakness. Once you open up and talk about your weakness, you're now actually at a higher intimacy than the cliches. You don't really have intimacy with somebody you met at the bus station or in a grocery store. You don't have that. You just have cliches. But then as you are more intimate, what happens? We're more vulnerable. We're more open. We're weak. So here, a law of intimacy. You have to have intimacy, you have to have what? Vulnerability. To be intimate, you have to be exposed. That is the price. Is that true, Mary?
Absolutely.
That's the price of developing relationship in human life. Tell me what is the first thing? They call it bonding. They call it bonding and attachment. What do they do when a baby is brought out of the uterus of the mother? First thing they do? Skin to skin. They cannot have clothes. Right? So that they have to feel the mother. In relationship, again, we go back to the adoption and marriage. A baby that has to be adopted has to be nursed by the mother if they are at the time of nursing. A marriage, that means the two persons are exposed to each other. Otherwise, they have no kids. What does it mean to have kids without being vulnerable or exposed? Makes no sense. On the physical level, talking about also on the spiritual and the mental level. So for them to have attachment to each other, for them to have attachment to God, what do we need? Confession. That's where we are vulnerable in the church. We bring ourselves to the church vulnerable, naked. If we don't understand this, our spiritual life is fake. It's just a facade. It's something we put on. But if you want to really be closer to God, you have to put yourself in vulnerability. There is no way out of this. Don't even think about it. To keep my face and to keep my cover and to be desiring to grow intimate with God is a false idea from the devil. That's what the devil wants. We move on. So that relationship has to be kept. But the same requirement of intimacy is also a risk, a weakness. So you can look at it from two ways. You can say it's good, right? If you think about it as developing intimacy. You can think of it as evil because you're open and anybody can actually hurt you. Which way you're going to go? That's why when Jesus goes to the cross and makes his commitment to us on the ultimate sacrifice he's going to, he goes up naked. He has to go up naked. And they have to handle him down from the cross naked and to put him in the coffin naked. This nakedness was intended from the beginning. This is how we're going to get intimate with Christ, and he gets intimate with us. Now, God warned Adam, the day you eat of it, you shall die. When they ate and hid themselves from God, they lost their source of life and died spiritually, and physical death started working with them. From that moment, for God, who is outside time, he saw their death. He saw them dead spiritually, morally, physically, everything. Because that intimacy, they're actually very much like babies with their mother, kept them alive. You get that separation, that's it. That's it. And that's why when we get out of this life, we're going to have there's no other source of life except with God. There's no other source of life. Eternal death to somebody who doesn't die. How does that feel? The first family is separated from God. And then, so what we look at the punishments now. Now, look at the punishments. Yes, one sec. Let me finish that punishments. We can call them punishments. What did God say to Adam that he needs to do from now on as a discipline or punishment? And why is it a discipline, not punishment? Huh? He was, by the way, work was given before the fall or after the fall? Before. He told him to work, to till the garden and to guard it. But what happened after the fall to work? It became laborious and not fruitful. It brought thorns and thistles and sweat and stress. Why? Why would God put this on Adam? As if God is vindictive. Is God vindictive? He's holding a grudge against humanity? You think so? God would hold a grudge against us? Well, why would the God do this to Adam? Sometimes we think of God very little, by the way. And why would he say to the woman, by pain, you're going to have pregnancy, and by pain, you're going to have to deliver? He's taking a very big vengeance on the woman. Why? Think about it. All right, let me just say this. Okay, let's say that there was no pain. Now, what happens after the fall? We now know how to differentiate between good and what not good. Something good for us, away from God. I'm not going to think about how God thinks about things. I'm going to take it to myself. Everything will be judged by me. And I look at let's say Eve. Start with Eve, it's easier. Eve looks at the baby and says, I can do better. Because now we have a judgment. But the judgment is very selfish. It's about me. Remember how Adam, when he felt like threatened, what did he do? No more bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, but it is the woman you made. Separation, complete separation. She's on her own, 2 minutes. She is on her own. So with a selfish mind, a person who's going to pick and choose for themselves, she finds a child who had not done anything for it, was not labor, there's no pain, there is no suffering, and the baby is not the best. She look at this, no, let's try again. Let's try again. What happened to the baby? If she doesn't kill him, she would actually not take care of him. Have you ever heard about the term precious baby? Anybody knows what that means? عيل غالي. ايه عيل غالي دي معناها ايه؟ Anybody heard about it? Huh? They suffered for it. They suffered. The more the mother suffered for the child, the more the preciousness of the child is to her. It's appreciation. Why is that? Because in a sinful, fallen world, the way to love is to suffer. That's it. In a sinful, fallen world, the way to love is the cross. Suffering became the synonym of love. You cannot have one without another. Because a love without suffering is very selfish. We love ourselves. We love ourselves. I want a child to make me a mother, to make me feel like a mother. I want a child to make me feel like a father. I want to complement my image, whatever. I have to have a family, whatever. But to love the child, for the child, then I have to suffer for the child. That's why mothers are already starting to attach and bond with the child as they carry their babies on. And the father. Why the father has to sweat and have hard time in work? Because he has to bond himself to his family that he needs to provide for. So the family becomes precious, and the children becomes precious, and humanity develops by the cross. The cross started to show itself very clearly after the fall. Without the cross, there is no love. Basically, that's the point. And all these things that actually the fathers had spoken about, he said, we need the cross. Anyone who doesn't think about the cross as one of the most important item in love is going to be fooling themselves. There is no love that is true without carrying a cross for somebody. All right, so that's basically, so is it a punishment? No, I don't think it's a punishment. It's actually medicine for a fallen, selfish humanity who got now a very strong tool in their hands. They can differentiate between good and evil, which is pleasant and not pleasant. They take it to themselves, and now they are like God. That's what God said. They're like me now. They can act, but not like me in the choices. They like me in ability to make choices, the freedom. When they were babies, I told them what's good and what's not good. I was coaching Adam to have a family. I was coaching him to know what is to be done. But now, Adam and Eve is doing it on their own, away from me. But they're so selfish and scared. What's going to happen to the humanity? We end up, the story actually tells us what happens to humanity. We end up with the flood in the time of Noah. They keep going further away and making wrong choices until we end up with the decision to annihilate humans and start over again. This is the story. This happens to us every day? Absolutely. This is what we do. We make choices away from God, and we don't think of God, and we don't consider Him in our mind when we're actually thinking about things. And the devil says, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen to you. It's been done before. You know, look at this, look at that, look at that. And many people are touching the tree now. Many people. Well, nothing is happening to them. No fire came from heaven and jolt them. But what happens to us? We get separated from our Father. And then we have to go back and confess and be vulnerable. That's what Adam had to be done. Here I am, Lord. Adam, where are you? What is he asking for? God knows. And I'm sure Adam says, why are you asking me? You know everything. Why are you asking me? But he doesn't know that he's asking him for Adam to come and confess and say, here I am. أنا لوصت الدنيا. أنا حببت الدنيا. I did something very wrong. I need you to help me. That's it. That's what I think is happening. Okay. May the love of God the Father and grace of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. In peace, be with you.